All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for letting us look at wisdom literature. Um, your word is so wonderful, and we want to think your thoughts after you. I pray you help us in this class, help me as a lecturer. Pray that you would empower our discussions. I pray that at the end of the day that we'll love you more and love other people more. We pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. So just a few little tweaks from kind of our normal setup. One thing I want you to do, and probably this is completely normal, is if you go to the website, I think the attendance quiz should be open. And that's exactly, it's been in the past. If it's not open, we can just sign in. Today, here is the sign-in sheet. We can just pass it around. And I will try to have that every time here, just a little behind the 8 ball, the first day of class. One thing that I want to do differently is I think I came up with a way where we can do the notebook a little better. And if you go to the content page, I have a notebook template. And this is a way where we can declutter from electronics. So if you print this out, every 7 class periods, a notebook will be due. You can use class time to fill it out. And I have several sections, so the date and the topic, and then your reading pledge that you've done, the reading for that day. Now, I give you grace today. You may not have gotten the thing, so if you didn't do the reading, count yourself at 100% today, but from here on out, try to read the biblical text before, and so you do the reading pledge, and then you can take handwritten in-class notes, and you can see it's about not quite a page there, and then a section for questions during your reading. So as you read through, if you have a question, you can put it there. I will do the QR code thing and the link where you can also submit those questions, where I'll be able to see it, and I'll give you extra credit for every day that you do that. So, but try to come up with 2 questions, and then that's it for lecture 1. And so this is a way where we can write the notes, and then when you turn it in electronically, just take it to the library and email it to yourself as a PDF, and you can upload that PDF. So does that make sense to everyone? I know there's a way to make it one document, so, and I think it's just put it in the photocopier, and it will become one PDF. You mail it to yourself, and then you just upload it. So questions on that? Yes?
I was going to say, you can use Adobe Scan too. And take
On
a
your
picture of
phone?
the page, yeah, and it'll make it into a
Oh,
document.
yeah, so that's
Just helped me in the past.
yeah. So I did that to encourage us not to like just copy stuff. So sometimes writing it down makes me think through it better. So, and when we have the 7th class period, after that class period, like a day or something after that class period, just upload the notes for that day.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that seem fair? I've done that in all my classes because I know in the bigger class, I don't really know that you guys are great students, but in my other classes, I know that people like surf the internet during class. I'm trying to come up with a way where, because I know for me that's a little distracting. I imagine it's a little distracting for you when people are surfing YouTube videos. And I don't know, I can't really do two things at the same time, so I don't know, figure a way to declutter a bit. All right. So what we're doing then, the daily attendance, we meet 28 times, and so there are 7 points per day available. If you do the Bible reading and are here, you get the points. If you have to be away for an excused absence, or if there's a serious reason, then I can excuse that. But that's almost 20% of the grade. The notebook, so we'll have 4 notebooks due every 7 sections, so that's 32% of the grade. We'll do a memory verse, which is just a spectacular lady wisdom section in Proverbs, and we're going to go back and look at that over and over, and so memorizing it will help. And then here are the final exam questions, and so I would print these out on a blank page, and every day when we go through, ask, hey, can I add something to this? You create your own study guide. So any questions about that in terms of what we're doing? It's kind of like other classes that I've done. So in terms of what we're covering, we will, we have 28 times, and what we're going to do today is the whole idea of Jesus as the wisdom of God. So we're looking at wisdom literature in the Old Testament, but kind of our starting point is going to be Jesus as the wisdom of God. And we're going to look at 2 passages, one in 1 Corinthians and then the Luke 24 passage of the whole Christocentric Old Testament interpretation. Just to kind of tip my hand now, in the wisdom literature, which covers some of the Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, what we have is David, wisdom literature from David, and then 3 wisdom literature from basically Solomon. Solomon has great inspired wisdom. My son, do not give your heart to foreign women. Says Solomon, who was married to 700 women and 300 concubines, and they turned his heart again. So, how do we navigate that where this is inspired wisdom, but it's inspired wisdom being spoken by someone who does not follow his own advice? So we're going to look at all of that. And my starting point is that Jesus is the perfect commentary on wisdom literature. When Solomon said, my son, do not give your heart to foreign women, he was saying something that was absolutely true. He lacked the ability to follow his own advice. Jesus is the wisdom of God, so he can say, my son, do not give your heart to foreign women, and his life corresponded exactly. And so we're going to read wisdom literature in that light, and even things like Proverbs saying, answer a fool according to his folly, don't answer a fool according to his folly. That seems contradictory until you realize that Jesus, when people needed to be confronted, he confronted those people. And when he knew that confronting was not going to do anything, he didn't. So he's like the perfect commentary on wisdom literature. That's going to be the argument that I'm going to try to make throughout this course. So what we're going to do today is look at Luke 24 and 1 Corinthians 1. Next time we're going to look at all Proverbs, like the whole book. We're going to look at all of Job the next time. You can skim over it however much you can do in the 2 hours. Once you've spent 2 hours, you can stop. We're going to read all of Ecclesiastes. Oh my goodness, talk about a steamy book. We're going to read all of Song of Solomon. And then we're going to start working our way through individual wisdom texts. So we're going to look at all the wisdom psalms, and then we're going to dive in and look at 2 really important wisdom psalms. We're going to look at the really important Lady Wisdom section and how that is being connected to Jesus. We're going to look at Psalm 45, which is kind of the mini Song of Songs. So it's kind of like the Cliff Notes to Song of Songs. So we're going to read that. We're going to look at Ezekiel 36. I mean, how could we have a class where we don't talk about Ezekiel 36? And we're going to look at some Proverbs texts related to the sun. We're going to look at Psalm 22, which is going to be interesting with Easter coming up. And then we're going to look at particular passages in the wisdom literature that are difficult to understand. And so once we kind of get our whole Bible bearing and then the individual books, we're going to drill down and look at particularly difficult passages. We're going to end with maybe the most perplexing, interesting idea, and this idea of the atemporality of God, that God created time and therefore he's outside of time and not bound by time, and how that will relate to our understanding wisdom. So what I'm asking you to do is to read through as much of this. You know, once you get to 2 hours, you can stop, but as much as you can read in 2 hours of these readings. And just be ready then when we come together to talk about questions that you have, and we'll treat this as a two-way discussion. Does that make sense to you? Any questions? It's interesting, if you'd asked me what section of Scripture do you understand least, I would have said wisdom literature. And a year ago, people started asking me to lecture on wisdom literature. So they're asking me to give a lecture on something that I felt not. My church did it, the jail where I work did it, BTS, the seminary that I teach Hebrew, they asked me to do it. They asked me to do video lectures. And then Sam asked me to do it here. So, like, I don't know, maybe it was God's wake-up call. Hey, you need to study wisdom literature. And I am so excited about what we're going to do, because I can't say that I have answers for all the problem, but I think God's given me insight that at least we're going to be looking in the right direction. So I'm really excited about what we're going to do together. So where we want to start is with a passage in 1 Corinthians. And for my mind, this is the quintessential New Testament wisdom passage. There are a couple other New Testament wisdom passages that we're going to look at, but this is the quintessential one. And I want us to work through it kind of word by word in light of the idea of coming to the Old Testament wisdom literature and to try to use this to understand that. So this is 1 Corinthians 1:18. For the word of the cross, and if you guys don't mind, I'll do that kind of hyper-literal thing. I'm going to hyper-literally translate the Greek, and that's just for me, and some of you can probably follow along. And then the ESV is the one you follow along, and if you have any question like why I do something one way, feel free to stop. But we'll do a hyper-literal translation, and then we'll talk about what this means. So, the word of the cross to those who are perishing is foolishness. And this word is actually where we get the word moron from. Like it's idiocy, it's foolishness, it's utter folly to the people who are in the process of perishing. When you talk about the cross, it's stupidity. I don't know the word strong enough to get it. This word moria, foolishness, worldly wisdom, silly talk, foolish talk, stupid, foolishness, related to Nabal in Hebrew, utter folly. So however we want to translate that, Paul is saying, when I preach what Jesus did to people who are perishing, it's just utter stupidity. But to the people who are being saved, it is the power of God. So depending on the audience, it's going to come across as stupidity, or it's going to come across as the power of God. For it stands written, I will destroy the Sophia. And this is where we get the girl's name, Sophia. It's the word wisdom. One of the wonders of the ancient world, Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, like all coming back to this word wisdom. The word sophomore, I don't know if any of you are sophomores here, but that means wise idiot, right? Did you know that's what sophomore means? The wise person who is moros. So people talk about a sophomoric mistake where you have a little knowledge, you know. This is the root word, Sophia. I will destroy the Sophia of the wise people. And the understanding of those who can put things together. So the synthesis, I will utterly undo. Where is the wise person? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made morao, made foolish, the Sophia of the cosmos? For since in the wisdom of God, the cosmos did not know God through wisdom, God was pleased through the moria, the idiocy, the lunacy, the stupidity of what was preached to save those who are believing. Since even the Jews ask for signs and Greeks seek Sophia, but we preach Christ having been crucified, to the Jews a scandal, to the Gentiles, Moria, utter folly. But to the called, both Jews and Gentiles, Christ, the dunamis of God, the power of God, and the Sophia of God. Because the foolish thing of God is wiser than men, and the weak thing of God is stronger than men. For you should look at your calling, brothers. Not many of you are wise according to the flesh. Not many of you are powerful. Not many of you are of noble birth. And do you see that's where we get the word eugenic from that word? But the foolish things of the world, God has eklegoed. Now, can any of you all who've had Greek tell me what eklego means? It actually comes straight into English. We get the word elect from it. It literally means picked out, right? The foolish things of the cosmos, God has picked out. Now, those of you who know Greek, that's a middle. Do you see how it parses? What does a middle tell you when something's in the middle voice? What's the difference between I paint the wall active and I paint the wall middle? What does the middle imply?
It's current.
Sorry?
It's current.
That's the present part of it. But that's a good...
It's a personal interest or benefit to you.
Right. So I often use this example when I'm explaining the middle. At Bryan College, you might have the occasion to say, I went out on a date the other day. If you say that in the active voice, you aren't implying anything about whether it was a great date or not. It's just that you did it. If you go out on a date and you think, oh my goodness, this is like the person, like I think. In Greek, you would say that with the middle. And in English, we would say, I went out on a date. You know, but we don't have a way in written form to show that in English. They have a way to do it in Greek. And so when it says God elected, it isn't like God's throwing dice and saying, oh, okay. It's like God is saying, I elected this person to salvation. Oh my goodness. There's no way to communicate that in English, is there? I mean, how would you even do that? Put a footnote, have a YouTube video? Hey, this is a middle, but it is a middle. A lot of times you can't tell if it's a middle because it could be a passive, but this one can only be a middle. And so it has to have that middle thing. So God middle elected the foolish things of the cosmos in order that he might shame the wise. And the weak things of the cosmos, God eklegoed, picked out, in order that he might shame the powerful things. And the agenete, and you remember that word eugenics? This is the alpha privative of that word, the not well-formed. the things being despised, God eklegoed. The things that are not, in order that he might annul the things that are. Just by way of curiosity, any idea where he might get this biblically, the things that are not? God eklegoed the things that are not. The nothings, the emptinesses, the vanities. Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, but what does Ecclesiastes go back to? So the intertextual echo, high five, but it goes Genesis 1, and help me. God made the earth out of nothing. It was without form and void. That's bad. The one I was thinking of was a kid who has a funny name. Abel. And what does his name mean? The nothing, the emptiness, the vanity. I think Paul's reading that here. God chooses the nothing. But from him you are in Christ, who has become Sophia for us from God. Christ has become Sophia. Now, have any of you looked at that passage from Proverbs 8? We could study Proverbs 8, 22 through 36 every second of this class from now until the end, and we would only begin to scratch the surface. The Hebrew is really hard, but I want to take a first look at it now. We're going to come back to this over and over. This is probably what's in Paul's mind. This is what, and you tell me when I read something and you think, whoa, that doesn't quite sound right, okay? Or, I don't know, you may not have that, but a lot of people will have that. The Lord kanna'd me as the reshit of his way. Now, sorry, hey, I'm a Presbyterian minister. It's the closest we'll ever get to tongues, right? So I said that joke in my church and everybody laughed, so, but I don't know. The Lord kanna'd me. This word kana is the same exact word that Eve says when she has Cain. I have kanna'd a man with the Lord's help. Therefore, she called his name Cain, acquired one. But it's a birthing word with Eve. It's a possession word. Some people have translated it, created me. Do you see why this passage is fought over for centuries? I'm going to do it, the Lord possessed me, or maybe even begot me, as the reshit of his way. Now, those of you who've had Hebrew, where have you heard this word reshit before? Bereshit bara Elohim, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, in the reshit, God barad everything that existed. Now, when I say it that way, is there some, does that like cause bells to go off. Because in Hebrew, you could translate that God as the Reshit created the world. Okay, I'm interested now. So the Lord possessed me as the beginning of his way, before his works of old, from of old. From eternity, I was set forth, and this is the exact same word that's in Psalm 2 of when God establishes the Messianic king. So Psalm 2 and this passage are linked. Genesis 1 in this passage are linked. From the head, from before the world. So this is someone kanad by God, possessed, brought forth, however you want to do it, that is with God before creation happened. I don't know. Are you interested? It's like what was God doing before he created? Well, we have a glimpse here. When there was no depths, so this is the word translated abyss or deeps, I was caused to be begotten. This word is the exact same word David uses when he says, in sin my mother conceived me. This is the exact word. It's a hofal. You don't see a hofal everywhere in the Hebrew Bible. Well, sorry, they're saying it's a puel. I guess it is a puel, but you don't see that many puels either. I was intensely brought forth. When there was no fountains, being made glorious with water. So whatever this is talking about is before anything was actually created. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the high hills, I was pual born. I was intensely born. Before he had made the earth, or the outside, or the head of the dust of the earth, when he established the heavens, I was there. So whoever's speaking is speaking as a person with God before any creation ever happened. I don't know, is that an interesting, there's only one God, right? So, who is this figure with God? When he drew a circle around the faces of the deep, when he made firm the dust of, I don't know, I've tried to translate this, I don't know. Usually this is the word dust, but it seems like it's being used as the word sky here. When he made firm the shahakim from above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he set to the sea its limits, and the waters shall not cross his mouth, in an ordinance from the foundations of the earth, yeah, by his side. You know, what can you tell me, Tate, about the word yeah?
That's the name of God.
Like that is the exact name of God. When God says, when Moses says, "Who are you?" God says, "Ihya Esher Ihya." I am who I am. I was who I was. I will be who I will be. And now this figure who is with God is saying, Ihya. So do I translate that? I was, I will be, I am who I am who I am, and I'm with God. Can you see why this passage is so important? Ihya, I was at his side as an Amun. And nobody knows exactly what this word means. I think it means a master craftsman. So God is saying, let there be light. God's saying, let there be land. God's saying, let there be a rakia. And this passage is saying that this figure who is with God is the one who's actually doing it. Ihya, so this is virtually God's name again. And do you do it? I was who I was. Do you do it? I will be who I will be. Do you do it? I am who I am. Or do you do it all three of those at the same time? Ihya, and this is the word delight, and it's in the plural. It's desire or delight. Pleasure is tied up with this word. I don't know how to translate it, but it's in the plural. So it's the word delight, but it's in the plural. I eternally existed as plural delights, day after day. And 40 years of studying Hebrew, I don't know how to do this. This is a masculine plural word. I was his plural delights day after day. I, man plural, day after day. So it's translating, I was his daily delight. So this word delight is the masculine plural. But then it says, rejoicing before him always. This word is feminine. Do you have an intelligent reader question? I mean, it's bad enough to have someone present with God creating, right? Now you've got a woman with God creating. Is that intriguing to you? Like, I read that and think, what do I do with it? Like, this is a feminine PL participle. And don't take my word for it, but look. So it's a PL participle feminine singular of the word play, jest, delight. PLs are usually intensive, so like going off like somebody won the national championship, and I'm not going to say, but my heart is hurting right now. But like, I don't know, like just totally losing it in rejoicing. Feminine And this is the same thing, only it's plural and it's masculine. Now I've got an intelligent reader question. Why? Before him, and then this is what it literally says, in the entirety of time. That seems odd to me. And I guess they're doing it always, which I guess you can do it, but like, doesn't that just in simple Hebrew say in the whole of time? And then we're back to the feminine participle. I was the feminine thing, intensely rejoicing in the created world of his land, and my pleasures were with the B'nai Adam. Now, is there a problem with that? Lady Wisdom is saying, I was there at creation. I was the master craftsman. Before the mountains were born or anything, I was delighting. In the totality of God's presence in all time, I was delighting, and my delight was in the B'nai Adam. Is there a problem with that? When were the B'nai Adam created, before or after the mountains? After? Help me. How do you delight in something before that thing exists? I don't know, you're starting to see why this is such a fact. We're going to keep going back. Now, O sons, listen to me, and the blessings of my way guard. Hear the instruction, be wise, do not neglect it. O the blessings of the Adam, listening to me, to diligently guard over my doors day by day, to guard my doorpost. Yes?
In 34, it said, like, oh, the blessings of the Adam.
Of the
It
Adam.
says to the one in the English translation.
Yeah.
Or like over on the right side.
Yeah. You tell me, is that the word Adam?
It totally is, but I'm just curious, why would they translate it as one?
Because they're interpreting this as human being, and then they're making it more gender friendly.
It's a very neutral word.
And Adam can mean that.
Right.
But Adam can also mean Adam.
Huh.
That's what I said. Oh, the blessings of the man, constantly hearing me. Now, this is Lady Wisdom speaking, not God. But this is God language, right? Or, I don't know, can you say not God? I mean, what would God be without wisdom? To carefully look over my doors, and this word carefully look over is also the word almond in Hebrew. So You know, if you ever read that prophet, what do you see? I see an almond. God says, you're right, I'm going to carefully look over Israel or watch it. That's what's going on, is play on words. The menorah has almond blossoms on it. And Aaron's stick that came back to life, it had almond blossoms and almonds. To carefully look over my doorposts day after day, to guard my doorposts of my opening, because the one finding me finds multiple life. And what do you notice about that? The one who finds me finds. Did scribes like that, or did they want to change it?
Isn't
Well,
three of the same word, basically?
it is. So what you have is what's in the text and what they want you to say out loud and what's written. So they call this the Kethiv, and this is the Kareh. So they're don't want to change anything, so they keep it the same, but they're telling you, read it this way, even though it's written that way. But whenever you get to something like that, that shows that there's something going on here that we probably need to look at eventually. The one who finds me finds life, and obtains favor before the Lord. He who fails to find me, and isn't this the word sin? Injures himself. Everybody who hates me loves death. Wisdom has built her house. Now, what's interesting about all that to me is Lady Wisdom in Greek is called Sophia. And do you remember what Paul said? Because, oh, it would help if I would put the English up, sorry. I haven't quite figured out how to do all three of them at the same time. That would be cool, but I can't make it work like I want it to. From him you are in Christ Jesus, who has become Sophia for us from God. Is Paul reading the Proverbs 8 text and connecting that somehow with Jesus? I would think yes. Do you have a gazillion questions if you connect Jesus with Sophia? I have a gazillion questions. Like, what's going on? I don't know the answer. I do know that Augustine has a very interesting idea called totus Christus. The entire Christ, I guess, would be the... And totus Christus is usually what Augustine applies to the Psalms. And he believes that it's always Christ speaking in the Psalms, but sometimes Christ speaks of himself alone. You've begotten me, today I've begotten you. Sometimes he speaks in the voice of his wife when he confesses sins. And sometimes Totus Christus is Christ and all those who ever make up Christ. And so you wonder, I wonder, could this feminine person speaking with God before creation somehow be tied up with Totus Christus, Christ, speaking in the unity of, doesn't the text say that we were elect in him before the foundation of the world, that the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world? So I don't know that that's right, but that's something I want to explore and think about. Okay, so questions or comments or observations? We kind of jumped in the deep end, did we not? But do you see why 1 Corinthians 1 is such an important wisdom text? Because Paul seems to be saying, hey, that weird passage, hey, that's connected with Jesus. So we're going to look more at it, but that's kind of why I want to start with this passage. Questions or comments? So the Hebrew of that passage is hard to me, and there are significant textual variants. I'm not satisfied that I know exactly what's going on, but I do know it's an important enough passage that it deserves our attention. So that's why I wanted to do it. To kind of justify like this whole Christocentric approach to the Old Testament, some people would say that what I do is over-reading the Old Testament. I've had my friends say you're eisegeting the text. I don't think I am. I think I'm doing exactly what the New Testament apostles did when they came to the Old Testament, that they believe it was inspired by God, that they believe that there was a canonical intertextuality, if we put it in today's terminology, that stories from the New Testament are playing with stories from the Old Testament, and when you read, you can't rightly understand if you don't look at the Old Testament passages. I've been writing up some of my ideas, and I confess I have used Claude to summarize lectures, and Claude suggested the term divinely inspired canonical intertextuality, and Claude said you should call it DICI. So that's what I've been doing, and I think DICI is exactly what the New Testament writers were doing, that they believe that every word in the Old Testament was connected with Jesus. And this is where people like me get that view. And so in the time that we had left, I wanted just to go over it. It said certain ones went out with them onto the tomb, and they discovered it just as the women said, but him they did not see. And then this is going to be Jesus responding. He said to them, "Oh, foolish." And you see that's alpha privative in the word mind. So you could do, mindless and slow of heart to believe on everything the prophets had said. Was it not necessary that these things happen, that the Christ suffer and enter into his glory? And then this is the key passage for me. Having begun from Moses and all the prophets, he thoroughly interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. When I look at that in Greek, I think this sentence is saying, in all the scriptures are the things concerning himself. And he just didn't interpret, that's where we get the word hermeneutics from. He dia hermeneuod, he thoroughly interpreted. So if I think a right understanding of this would be when you read the Noah's story, it's about Jesus. When you read Sodom and Gomorrah's story, it's about Jesus. When you read the exile story, it's about Jesus. When you read Joshua and the promise, it's about Jesus. I think that's what that sentence is saying in Greek. Other people say no, it's some things about him in the scriptures he interpreted. So the passage is, a prophet like me. I just don't think that's what this sentence says. I think this sentence is saying everything is about Jesus. And I just might point out, I don't know, is this interesting to you? I might point out when someone says, is the Noah story really about Jesus? Well, I might point out this is a pet peeve I have with the ESV. Love the ESV. The ESV is a fantastic translation. This is a pet peeve I have with it. It says the waters became great, and this is the word warrior. So it's like the waters are fighting against the earth, and became exceedingly heavy on the earth. And then it says, the ark floated on the face of the waters. The ark floated on the face of the waters. That's where my pet peeve is. It's with this word right here, halak. What does the word halak mean in Hebrew? So you're telling me this says the ark walked on water? Well, surely there are other places where the word halak means, surely there are other places in the Bible where the word halak means float, right? This is the word, how many times is it used? About thousands of times it's used. How many times is it translated float? I think it's like this one little one. And you know where it's translated float? Here. Now, if I translated the ark walked on water, a 6-year-old would be able to say, I know somebody else who walked on the water, salvific space, right? But if I do it, the ark floated on water, nobody can connect that with Jesus, can they? I got a pet peeve. I think I'm right. I don't know. One day they'll revise the ESV, and I don't know. There's a Christocentric approach to the Old Testament. And I think this passage is saying in all the scriptures, so Jesus is saying, whenever you read anything, ask the question, how is this like Jesus? We come to 44, this is in the upper room. It says, he said to them, these are my words which I spoke with you while I was still with you, that it was necessary that all the things having been written in the law of Moses, all the things having been written in the prophets, all the things having been written in the Psalms, must be fulfilled about me. That seems like it's a Christocentric interpretation. And then it says, then he opened their minds to put the scriptures together. So that's why when I come to the Old Testament, I'm looking for Jesus. If the story is positive, I say, how's it like Jesus? If the story is negative, how's it a contrast to Jesus? I come to the text and say, how is this text like the Garden of Eden? How is this text like the eschatological consummation? I come to the text and say, how am I like the characters in this story, particularly the bad characters? And I think you can go a long, 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 long way in interpreting the difficult passages in the Old Testament by approaching those passages from a Christocentric point of view. And since we just have a few minutes before the close of class, have any of you ever tried to read through the Bible in a year? And you read Genesis, great. Patriarchs, great. Exodus, great. Plagues, tabernacle. And then what do you run into? Leviticus. And like, what in the world is that? Would you believe me if I told you that the title of the book is not Leviticus in Hebrew? So Leviticus, that's the Greek translation. And does anybody know what leuitikon means in Greek? Levi stuff. Priestly stuff. So what's the name of the Bible? Priestly stuff. You know that's not the name in Hebrew.
Isn't the Hebrew name and he called?
And he called. In Hebrew, it's and he called to Moses. He's calling Moses into his presence in the tabernacle. There's gold there. There's bdellium there. There's onyx there. There's the immediate presence of God there. There's a tree there. What else in the Bible has gold, bdellium, onyx, the immediate presence of God, cherubs, and a tree?
The garden.
The garden. So when God is calling Moses into his house, what's he doing to Moses? He's calling him where? Now, have any of you ever gone to a party like where you're dressed wrong? Have you ever had that? So imagine like, Elon Musk invited you to his daughter's wedding, and you showed up and you've got like a tuxedo t-shirt on, and flip-flops. And you go in like, and everybody else has real tuxedos on or, whatever. How are you going to feel at that moment? Like you've got a tuxedo t-shirt on. It's probably a lot funnier to you when you put it on than it's going to be when you walk in that room, right? Could Leviticus be helping us see that we aren't quite Eden-like people? Could it be God's gentle way of saying, I want you to live with me in Eden, but you're not quite ready to live in Eden? And I was helping a lady at my church yesterday, and she found this very helpful. I wonder how it will strike you. Have you ever wondered why there are so many weird things in Leviticus? Like the animal things are pretty clear. It's basically anything to do with death, like makes you unclean in Leviticus. But have you ever read through Leviticus and been struck by the fact that also anything even remotely connected with human sexuality makes you unclean? Have you ever wondered about that? Well, let's try some ideas. Here's an idea. The God of the Bible hates human sexuality. Do you think that's the right explanation?
No.
And why can't that be the right explanation?
Because he says be fruitful and multiply.
Right, the very first command in the Bible, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, like to two people naked in a garden, go make babies. When you've had enough babies to fill the entire world, come back, I'll give you commandment 2. That doesn't sound like a God who is hung up about human sexuality. And we're going to read Song of Songs, and I mean, there's some stuff in Song of Songs we're not going to talk about because, like, I don't want to get phone calls from parents, but you're going to read it and you think, is that talking about what I think it's talking about? And it's like, okay, it's a steamy book. It's in the Bible, right? And what's the very last analogy when it describes the eschatological consummation? The marriage supper of the Lamb, where two people are counting down the minutes to be together. That's the analogy of the eschatological consummation. So the fact that the first command in the Bible, the fact that the last image is of the eschatological consummation, you have this book in the center that is all about this out there. And when you read the book, make sure when you read Song of Solomon, make sure you read a version that tells you when it's the girl talking or the guy. Because if you get a copy like that, it's going to be even more interesting. The whole book is mostly from the girl's perspective. It can't be that God has something against human sexuality, but the question remains, why is it that human sexuality, even within marriage, makes a couple unclean? Have you ever thought about that? Can I float another idea? Death. What do the unredeemed bodies of two spiritually dead people always produce? That's the key. It's dead things that make you unclean. And when believers have offspring on earth, are those believers born spiritually alive or are they born spiritually dead? What does David say? In sin did my mother conceive me. Well, David's the eighth son. That woman had been married for years and years. Like, it can't be saying it's the act. It's saying the moment I was conceived, I was spiritually dead. And if that's the right way to read it, there's nothing wrong with human sexuality. There is something wrong with sexuality east of Eden in its fallenness and brokenness. And Leviticus may be helping us see that there is something that still needs to be fixed in all of this. We've got 1 minute questions, comments. You see the lay of the land, what we're going to look at. We're looking at Proverbs. Read it in light of Solomon's life, and any question that you want to ask, that's going to be fair game, but we'll take an overview of the book. All right? All right, well, I'll see you on Thursday.